All right, today I want to talk about the mates and why I think it's one of the fundamental skills for growing your chess game. I'm talking about this massive tome. This is a beauty of a book. I'm convinced it helped me become a GM. I've had it for more than 2 decades. And one of the things, like I do with all these training program videos, I want to just start and say, you don't have to be in the training program to do what I'm telling you in this video. It's just something that I'm doing for the program to try to help explain why we're doing it, why this is such a fundamentally good thing. So let's check in on the training program. And here we have this amazing cohort here. This is 1100 to 1200. Every cohort is doing the mate and twos. And you can see here that we are at various stages of struggle. And in our Discord, I can tell you that it's a real struggle. Some people are doing 5 problems a day. Some people are doing 10. It is a rough struggle. And I think they're coming to the point, though, where people are beginning to appreciate. They're seeing the gains in their skill. And I just want to give a quick shout out to this amazing progress bar that our friend Figius created. Okay, so that's the struggle that's going on in the ChessDojo training program. And then let's move now to the puzzles. So there are 5 reasons to do the puzzles. And when people ask me, why should I do this terrible big book? I usually give an off-the-cuff answer, which really only addresses one of the 5 reasons this is a good thing. And that is that you are learning fundamental mating patterns. Okay? And when I do the book, I give them fancy names and stuff. You can give them names if you want. And I say something like, well, they're the layups of chess, right? You do imagine a basketball player. You're getting close to the hoop. Good basketball players are very good at the layups, but it's a very tricky dance because you have to adjust to your opponent. There's little weight things going on. You're moving all around. Or for a musician, scales, right? Basic building blocks of the craft. Okay, and this is an example. And so I'm going to say, number 1, patterns. All of these patterns that you see will come up again and again. Look at a problem like this. Oh, it's kind of difficult. If the king gets away, the king gets away. He's got loads of territory out there. And so by all these problems I'm going to show today, none are outrageously hard, but if you want to try to solve them, by all means, stop the video and check it out. The answer is this delicious queen a5, with the point that if knight takes, we have rook d7, and then the big one is king e7, queen d8. And of course, the knight is pinned. Now, this pattern, for example, is one of the most fundamental, and I call it the slice and dice, just because these squares are sliced and this thing is dicing the king. Comes up again and again with a variety of patterns. We can imagine, for example, let's put a knight here. That would be doing the same job. In a lot of ways, one of the funny things is harder to visualize the knight. And this book is great at helping you visualize knight square control. We're going to talk a little bit about that later. Now, number 2. One of the things that's kind of hilarious is when people try to create a reason why they shouldn't do this book. A common thing that you'll hear is that it doesn't come up in their games. All right, let's take a look. This happened just a couple days ago. This is Wesley So against Melkumian in the Olympiad. And one hilarious thing about when people say something like it doesn't come up in their games is if you don't know about a thing, it doesn't have to be just the mates, you will oftentimes just not see it in real life, and it'll just kind of be passing you by. Very similarly, with the rook endgames, I've heard people in our Discord say things like, oh, I've never got the Lucena position. Yes, you have. You have gotten the position and it's been done to you. You just didn't recognize it. And not only did you not recognize it when it was happening, but there were loads of positions which could have been, somebody could have aimed for. You could have done it, or your opponent could have aimed for the Lucena position. And neither player realized it. So these mates are happening actually all the time. And this is a really fascinating example in practical play. So white has just played rook e3. Ambitious. Rook e2 would be the more tame move, but rook e3 says, you know what? Maybe I want the e-file, plus maybe someday I'm going to dream about cruising over here. Okay, and Melkumian makes a great move, e5. The point being that if you take bishop c5, I'll tag the rook, and then knight e5. Great move. Great move. So here's it. It's an amazing position, because Wesley thinks for a little bit and says, you know what? I want to play to win this game, and I think if DE, that's kind of, black's okay, right? So he plays bishop h6, and Melkumian's like, that looks like a free piece. Rook e4. Beautiful, beautiful. In fact, black had to play something like knight b6 instead of e4. The point being, pop, check to the miserable king, check, out. Now, you're going to tell me, I'm sure someone's screaming. They're like, wait, Cry, that's not a mate in two. This is the beautiful thing I want you to see about the mate in twos. The mate in twos are not just about mate in twos. They're about pattern recognition and what mate looks like, right? So any kind of mate in a real game, you're going to be using all of the patterns that are happening in this. Well, you're going to be using all of them, but you will need all of the patterns to execute something like this in a real game. So it happens all the time, and especially when you're playing good attacking chess, you're going to need to find those patterns in a creative way. Okay, so that's number two. It's there. It's hidden beneath the surface. Number three, this is very important, especially for all endgame play, is that the mate in twos ingrain a sense and internalize a sense of Zugzwang. Zugzwang meaning you got to move, bro. That's the German translation. And a lot of times in chess, we don't really. It's a psychological thing. You think he's just static, right? You think the king is, it's as if you have to push the king. Let's say in this position, you have to push the king to move. No, the king has to move. Two funny things about this position. A great thing if you're teaching chess to kids or adults is you give them a rook and king, and you say, all right, now you try to mate your opponent, but your opponent gets to pass whenever they want. Can't mate. Can't do it. You cannot mate if your opponent is allowed to pass. So in order to just checkmate with a rook, this big, fat, beautiful rook, you need Zugzwang. And then with this position, it's funny. I have this vivid memory of this position. I was at some chess tournament. I didn't have any chess teachers or chess culture as a kid, and somebody showed me this position that says white to move mate in two. And I really struggled with it. And then to kind of make fun of me, the guy said, there's 5 different ways to do it. Like 5 different ways. So I'm thinking aggressive things to do with your pieces is how you're going to screw this up. You're going to be like, well, I'll move the rook here, put the king here. I want to get closer to that king. How do I get closer to him? Well, what are the 5 ways? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All 5 of those squares lead to mate. And it's a really important thing. Even with mating with a rook, of course you can do it this slow way. In fact, I remember back then when I mated with a rook, I would walk the king back and walk him to the side, Zugzwang him here, they walk him this way, and then finally get mate. Taking like forever. Mate shouldn't take that long with a rook. So what am I trying to say? The mate in twos ingrain a sense of Zugzwang, and you have to have it. You have to be able to visualize and sense every time. Oh, it's got to move, got to move, got to move. Like a metronome in your head. Okay. Number 4. I call this grip. And in a lot of ways, this is, I think, the most important benefit of the maiden twos. Even maybe more important than the patterns themselves. Is that one of the, maybe the biggest skill of a chess player is learning how to grip the board with your mind. And so, for example, maiden twos, you're going to have to figure out kind of this box. In this case, that's the scope of where that king could land, of squares that you have to control. And one of the things about, let's say, casual, I call them casual tactics, I mean like puzzle rush and stuff, is you don't necessarily need to know where every piece on the board is and what it controls. But position like this, you're going to need to understand where every single piece controls. And it's a whole board thing. You see that queen on g8, she's on the other side of the board. You have to see every single square. There's nothing in here that's random. And that's really important because it's easy to get sloppy in chess. And by that I mean to just be like, oh, it's okay. I understand what's kind of going on here. I'm feeling a flow. I've played a lot of blitz chess. I know how to do this. If you want to play good chess, you need to be able to have a grip of the position. And this is one of many, many examples where you really have to focus and find the answer. So in this case, the answer is knight a4 with king takes rook, and if pawn a6, or excuse me, knight a4, if pawn a6, what do we got? We got rook. What is it? what is it, cry? Pawn a6. Shoot. My chess.com is losing its mind here. Oh, kill me now. On pawn a6. Okay, hold on. I'm going to switch this up a little bit. On pawn a6, what do we have? We have rook e5. Notice the pawn got in the way of the king. Pawn a5. What do we got? Rook b6. So here, every square is controlled. It was key when we went to knight a4 that we controlled this square for that first variation with king c4 and rook b6. Also that one, that square, right? So that is an example. Now, let's do reason number 5. So a thing that I actually learned to appreciate after I first did these maiden twos years and years ago was that there's 2 different kinds of thinking in chess, a level 1 and a level 2. In all of life, in fact, there's a level 1 and level 2. Level 1, you're going about your day, you're not really thinking too much, your mind is calculating various things at the same time, trying not to fall down the stairs, trying to look, trying to think about what's next, yada, yada. Level 2 thinking is when you have to really drill down into, for chess, a position. And when we play a game, a lot of our time won't be spent in level 2 thinking. It'll just be those moments where we're like, okay, now it's really time to calculate, where we're not playing intuitively. And one of the things that the maiden twos teach is that you are going to be engaged in sustained level 2 thinking. For the harder problems, which is most of them, especially after, let's say, 1470, there is no respite. Like every position you are going to have to think, you're going to have to grip, you're going to have to see that square of the king where everything goes. And that requires a lot of energy. And There was a famous study years ago talking about how chess players burn a gazillion calories. It was kind of debunked, but the thing about the study that I don't think they understand is like for chess players, we're not always doing level 2 thinking. You can't, it's impossible. And one of the things these studies teach is like, oh, right, when you do it, when you go deep and do it for a sustained period of time, what you will experience by doing these maiden twos is you will say to yourself, geez, I'm really tired, man. I'm really exhausted. And it's a very useful thing, important thing to understand about chess and yourself, that level 2 thinking is way more exhausting than any kind of other thing you do in life. That's why when we came down out of the trees, we evolved from monkeys, our brains had to get like 20% more calories, right? It hurts to be human. It hurts. And so you're first of all, you're just appreciating that is an amazing thing about chess and then life. But number two, you're training yourself for more sustained thinking. I will say that when you're in a game and you're feeling kind of exhausted, the easy thing to do is go, that's about right. That move's good enough, instead of calculating deeper. And what this does, which I really like, is it forces you to be incredibly exact.